Everybody, I got a sister that, let me tell you, she just told me she was already on the interview. they interviewing this lady. She was on the interview before my interview. So that's how much she in demand. I'm so excited that she decided to be on Strong Inspiration. It's mind blowing that people are agreeing to do this with me because I give it to you straight, no chaser. I I I just come up with a couple questions and I let these knowledgeable people go for it and tell that story, and that's what she's going to do. But before she comes on, you know what I'm gonna ask you to do, my brothers and sisters, because I got love for you. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button, please. Come on. It don't cost you nothing. It's free. Just hit the button. It helped me understand how many people watching. And then do me another one. How about hit the like button on this video, because this lady know what she's talking about. She gonna give it to you and you're gonna be mind blowing, and you need to let us know that you appreciate this. All right. And hit the notifications bell. That's that little bell thing. It's on the scammer. It's at the bottom of the video. It's on the page, and all the bell does, it's free too. But I'm gonna be honest, all the bell does is because I'm uploading maybe 3, 4, 5 videos a week. You get a little ding as to there's a new video. And the thing about it is, I'm not putting no schedule when I'm doing it. I interview the people. I put a little edit on it to keep it for the time constraints and whatnot. And when I finish that, I'm ready for you to watch it. And it could be on a Thursday night or Sunday morning when I got a new video up. So you might want to be ready for this because I'm coming at you strong. Let me tell you, if you don't know, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. That's why I say it all the time, strong. And so you also know, or don't know, or will you now know, is that I got a movie out. I'm a filmmaker, everybody. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. I'm gonna blow you away with this. Because I know you ain't gonna know all of what's in my movie. Took me 2 years to do it. I got interviews. I like to give you an example. I got an interview of a guy who owns a cab company. The cab company was started in 1925. Black-owned cab company. He said them white folks wouldn't pick us up. We started our own thing. It's in my movie. 75 minutes long. It's streaming on Amazon. Get that. Watch it. You and your kids, get you some popcorn. And then I wrote a book to go with the movie because I was like, oh man, I would get people telling me, man, you got to put it in book form for me to share with my kids. There it is. It's called Black Business Book. Now the book don't have any interviews, but it's got more facts. There's 204 facts in this book. I'm telling you, that cab company guy, he not in here, but I talk about Black businesses owned by slaves. Man, you got to read this book, Slave-owned businesses. Unbelievable. And they use the profits to buy their freedom, everybody. Black Business Book. It's on Amazon too. You can get it as an e-reader where you ain't got to get the hard copy. But if you get the hard copy, check it out. Between me and you, I'll autograph it for you. One day that's gonna mean something. I'm telling you, watch me, because I'm doing this thing. This thing is from now on. And so it's also on Amazon. But if you, like I say, you want to cut the big Amazon man out, you know, he got a ton of money, building buildings all over the place. Then go to my website and go to this site too, businessintheblack.net. Businessintheblack.net. Just go to that site, you know, the PayPals and stuff like that. We take all the credit cards you got, your debit cards, and all that, and order your copy of this. I really appreciate it. And so, you know, I told you that my word is strong, right? I got a strong sister that's about to come on the channel in the next. Oh, come on now. I'm tired of talking. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Mr. Brogdon, it's a pleasure to be here to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing here in New Hampshire at the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire. My name is Jerry Ann Bogus. I'm the executive director of the Black Heritage Trail here, and we work to raise awareness for New Hampshire's over 400 years of Black history in order to build more inclusive communities. We
Oh man,
believe
that's
that
beautiful. How did you, if you don't mind, I ask, how do you like Black history this much to want to, be the executive director of this? How did that happen? How, you, what happened to you? How you get to be this way? Come on, tell us.
I'm originally from Jamaica, and I was in Alabama, and I transferred to school in New Hampshire. And when I was coming to New Hampshire, all my friends in Alabama said, "You're going to New Hampshire? There's 12 months of winter there, and most of all, there are no Black people there."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that that reputation of New Hampshire is long, wide, and deep. I really, after school, I ended up getting married and staying in New Hampshire. But it was in 2002 that I really got involved in Black history. Again, I said I'm a Jamaican, so I didn't know in African-American history, especially here in New Hampshire.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you right there. I'm a sidebar just for a second. Jamaica got Black history.
Yeah, we do.
And
I knew
I
that.
interviewed a guy. He said that hey, the Caribbean is where they first started taking them enslaved people. You know some history in Jamaica or what happened?
Oh God, yes. That's knowing our Black history is part of our DNA when you're in a majority Black country. You know, it's taught in schools. The signs on buildings tells you who your heroes were. You know, everybody grew up as a child knowing about the famous Maroon Nanny who fought the British to get our freedom. So those stories are part of our DNA.
Okay, hold on, stop you right there. You got one. You tell us a little bit of that story, please.
So the story, the fable of Nanny the Maroon, she did some guerrilla war fare against the British to really free a whole section of formerly enslaved people called the Maroons, that they're still free today and have their own, like Native Americans, have their own laws and their own beliefs and their own. They're in charge of they're an autonomous group in the island, and she was just a warrior, and she was able to really beat the British on the, using guerrilla warfare tactics.
One lady kind of, she had a troop behind her, or she just had a whole bunch
sure
of
did. She had formerly enslaved people, but she was the leader. She was the captain. She was the chief.
Now, when was this? When did they say this happened?
This was in the 1700s. I don't know the exact dates, but yeah.
Okay. Now, because slavery ended earlier in Jamaica than it did in America.
It sure did. It sure did. And in Haiti and lots of the Caribbean, way before it ended here.
Yeah.
Because of several uprisings, and it was no longer profitable for the British to really maintain the system that.
And so you say that there's monuments or historical markers throughout the island that talks about Black history.
Oh, absolutely. There was even a tree where one of there's signs everywhere. There was a tree where the British had hung Sam Sharp, and so the marker was on that tree. So even objects like a tree, not even a bronze marker, would tell of the stories of rebellion that the enslaved people did. Yeah. They hung Sam Sharp on that tree because he was leading a rebellion against the British.
And so I guess had an appreciation for it even as far back as then.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So in 2002, there was an article in our local paper, my town paper, that said,
is that Jamaica or New Hampshire? Where's that paper?
In Milford, New Hampshire.
Oh, in New Hampshire.
I live in Milford, New Hampshire. Okay. Yes. Okay. And the article came out and said New Hampshire's long forgotten daughter was first Black woman to publish a novel in English. And the article was about Harriet Wilson, who is the first Black woman to publish a novel in English. Okay. But that in 2002, after living in Milford for 25 years, that was the first mention the first time I'd ever seen a mention of a historic Black figure in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I'm
And so
sure.
that started a journey for me. Well, it really, it was a catalyst, but what got me going was, you know, Milford, if
When
that
you say
book,
Milford, where is Milford?
Milford is southern New Hampshire.
Okay, Southern. Okay, before we get to this New Hampshire, sister, just bear with me. You go from Jamaica to Alabama. Oh my God. You go from yeah, man to some other dialogue. Where in Alabama were you?
I got a scholarship to come to school to the US to a little town in Alabama called Gadsden, Alabama.
I know Gaston. No, yeah, I heard of
Yes, that's
Gaston.
where I went to
Yeah.
school for
Okay,
2
hold on. Let
years.
me ask you this. Were you one of them kids in grade school that got all A's?
I
Yeah,
didn't get
yeah, I
all
know
A's,
you
but
told me.
my mom's a teacher.
Okay, there you
So
go.
yeah, my
Yeah,
mom's a teacher.
so
So
you
yes.
crack off to Alabama. How did you find the school? How did they find you?
So I think that was a program that the US had for the Caribbean, and they assigned the school.
Okay.
Um and yeah, but
Okay.
afterwards I transferred from there to New Hampshire.
Was Alabama a eye-opening experience for you coming from Jamaica? How did you?
So I tell this story. Going from Jamaica to Alabama was much easier than going from Alabama to New Hampshire.
Oh, okay, I can
The
understand.
southern um, sensibilities was much closer to what we have in Jamaica,
Oh,
where
really? Okay.
you say to me, and I explained this, and it took years later for me to really understand, you know, coming from another culture, what these cultural dynamics were. But in Alabama, in the South, people tell you things straight. If they don't like you because you're Black, they tell you. If they don't want you in a room because you're Black, they tell you.
Have you ever had that happen to you?
Well,
Something like
in
that?
in Alabama, once a group of us went to a skating rink, and somebody says it wasn't the N-word night. So,
Wow.
you know, but we went in anyway because we were another group of Jamaicans that went in.
Oh,
But yeah,
man.
it was clear, you
You heard
know.
what they said.
Yes, we did. We heard what they said, and we
Wow.
went in anyway.
You don't get that in Jamaica. I know that's a Black town.
No, no.
Were you afraid when you moved to Alabama of the stereotypes and the racism that you could imagine that might be there?
You know, I think coming from a country where you are the majority, you don't think about certain things. And I didn't think, it sounds naive now, but I didn't think about um, the effects of racism on me personally, individually,
Really?
because it wasn't how I viewed the world,
Right.
right? I came with this majority mindset
Right.
that people would look at you for other things other than the color of your skin
Right. Did you have an aha
in the
moment
system.
where somebody said, "Hey, sister, you talking too much to these people," or "You need to calm it down," or something? You know what I mean? Did something like that ever happen?
I remember being in a store in New Hampshire and somebody was following me, and I was with another African American, and I said, "Boy, these people are so attentive. They're just following us around. Isn't that nice?" And she said, "Hey, sister, wake up. They're not following you because they want to be nice."
So you go from Alabama to New Hampshire. New Hampshire is, like you say, how many Blacks in New Hampshire?
Well, we're still a small percent of the population, but it doesn't mean we're not here. In two of our towns, Nashua and Manchester, it's 7%. Overall, we're about 3% of the population. People of color, which includes Asians, Hispanics, brings the number up to about 4.5% in state.
Okay. Now, New
So
Hampshire there's Black history in New Hampshire, and that's what you do at your center.
yes.
You tell these stories. So how was the center founded? Somebody said, "Hey, we need to tell some of this here in New Hampshire," when
So
and how and that kind of thing.
So about 20 years ago, there's an and I only met this woman after I started doing this research in 2002. But Valerie Cunningham, who was raised in New Hampshire since she was 2 years old in Portsmouth, when she was a young girl, decided that she wanted to find out if, if there were other people who looked like her lived in the state. And she started doing research when she was 12 on, and collecting a lot of these stories of early African Americans in her home state. And she would later put this all together in a book called Black Portsmouth.
Okay.
And she would start a trail highlighting these stories with markers. And then about 10 years ago, the African burying ground, one of the things that she had found in her research was a map that highlighted a certain area, a part of town, as the Negro burying ground. It was a 1700s map.
Really?
And as part of the marker project that she did, they put a marker on one of the buildings there. And then in 2010, during some construction, regular construction on Court Street, part of this area that was marked in the 1700s map as the Negro burying ground, they unearthed 18 coffins. And the remains were DNA tested, and they were definitely markers from West Africa.
Now, is there a particular area of the South that Blacks left to go to New Hampshire? Why did they go to New Hampshire in back in those days? What was that?
So the story of Blacks in New Hampshire, really the part of the southern enslaved people coming to New Hampshire is not the complete story of Blacks in New Hampshire. There were free Blacks in New Hampshire as tradesmen before the forming of New Hampshire as a state. And by the 1600s, 1644, New Hampshire was really heavily involved in the slave trade. Really? So yeah, so we had a port. We had our only port, the port in Portsmouth, was a dock where we would have enslaved people being auctioned off on the docks or in some of the taverns in town. We were heavily involved in the slave trade. New Hampshire was. We were building, New Hampshire made its wealth from shipbuilding, right? And we built the slave ships, we made the masts, we we were part of the triangular slave trade, where we would leave our ports in Portsmouth, go to West Africa, trade our goods, capture enslaved Africans, take them to the Caribbean so that they could be softened up, get used to that, bring them back to New Hampshire, sell them at our docks. We were totally involved in this, every aspect of the industrial slave complex.
And so they had enslaved people to work on the ship to go get more slaves.
Yes. That was one of the jobs that enslaved Black men could do. They were called blackjacks at the time. Okay. And it actually was one of the jobs that was, that they actually could get paid for doing, even if they were enslaved. Once they were on the ships, they had the autonomy of free men, but coming back to land, then they would be there were some ways that they were able to buy their own freedom,
Oh, really? Okay. Are there plantations around New Hampshire?
New Hampshire did not have plantations. We're not a plantation society. Our landscape just does not allow for that. But there's no area. It was having the enslaved was a status symbol for most of the wealthy families. They would do all of the service jobs. They would work in the houses. Any of the service jobs that the masters wouldn't do was passed on to the enslaved.
Wow. So it wasn't.
But not those huge plantations. More of what we look at is most of the houses would have 2 to 3. and some would have 6 to 10 enslaved people, depending on,
Are they a
except
part
for,
of your, is there still a house or two still standing that maybe that was the what was happening back then?
yeah, there are a lot of those, a lot of the grand old houses in Portsmouth that offer tours and stuff where there were enslaved people in. The enslaved people would either sleep in the attics. There's a couple houses that we know, the Moffat Ladd house. The Moffat Ladds were one of the biggest slave traders. The Langdon house. Um, the first governor, his ancestors were heavy slave traders. There's just a lot of houses around in Portsmouth because it were a historic town with a lot of historic buildings from the
Is
16
there
1700s.
is there a name of the company that built the slave ships?
Well, we have the different names for the different captains of the ship. I don't know the name of the companies. That was just small builders who would come in, and that's off of a little bit I'm not sure about, but I
Yeah, I
don't
was
know.
wondering, was one company but there were captains that maybe did the voyage more than once or so on and so
Yes,
forth.
absolutely.
When the slaves, is there a replica of a ship in your town or something like that?
No, we don't have that. No, we're just really starting to look at this history of enslavement with the African Burying Ground Memorial that came up 4 years ago now. Um, the memorial really brings to light that story of enslavement. So it's just something that New Hampshire is just really starting to look at, is this history of enslavement here.
Is that something that the people in New Hampshire can embrace, you think, or is there some pushback from you all even doing this?
We haven't had any pushback on our work. Um, Again, this is the north. The town of Portsmouth, the memorial was when the coffins were on Earth. The then mayor formed a Blue Ribbon Committee and brought together people of all over to decide how we would honor that space. And the people of Portsmouth really did embrace that,
Oh,
so that
really?
we could
Okay.
have this memorial. Um, Telling the stories and telling it truthfully, that's a whole other matter for different houses in different, some of these historic houses. There was one house that was doing an amazing job of integrating the story of enslavement with, you know, as an integrated history. But I think they've stopped doing that now. The Moffat Ladd House, which was really doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, because I
And
was wondering,
so,
in would it has to be, for lack of a better way, white people have to get behind this because they can kind of control the narrative and so on and so forth, and the money and what have you in a town like that to say we want to see this project go through to
yeah.
fruition.
Well, a lot, we've been fortunate. I mean, last year with all of the racial uprising and tensions, we've gotten a lot of attention for the work that we're doing because people, it awoken a desire for people in our state to learn more about this history and why we are where we are, how do we get here, and how we can do better. So yes, um,
Because they have to embrace that this is not just a fairy tale. This is real
this
history.
is reality. And that's exactly what that burying ground does. It brings it not out of, it brings it out of the realm of fairy tale and fantasy to, yeah, this really happened here on our soil in the north. It's not a southern story, it's a New England, New Hampshire story. You know, we weren't just helping enslaved escape to Africa, we were part of the enslavement of
I mean, a
Africans.
big part of it in many respects.
Yeah.
Is there a particular area that in the city that the enslaved lived after the slavery ended or something like that, which is that black community?
So are there areas, and this is something we're looking at now, when we go through and we look at history across the state, there wasn't a province in New Hampshire where there was not a presence of Black folks. Um, our communities are just because there were a lot of laws and stuff put in place that made it uncomfortable for Blacks to remain in New Hampshire, you know, finding jobs, warning people out of town, sundown towns. If you didn't belong in a town after sundown, you had to get out. So there were a lot of issues around that made it hard to create strong communities. But Portsmouth definitely had an area where there were communities. Exeter had an area where there were Black communities. Warner, a little town north of Concord, our capital, had a community of Blacks. And in the 1700s, there's a place where Revolutionary War, near Coit Mountain, that was named after a Revolutionary War veteran, where there was a community of formerly enslaved Africans that settled at the base of the mountain. So once you start looking at the history, once you start peeling back the onion, so to speak, these stories come around to show where these communities were. And then
Was Portsmouth one of the more vicious towns towards enslaved people, or the rural areas? Is that some stories that way, or it's all the same?
yeah, I don't know about the vicious stories where, again, this is relatively new stuff
Yeah.
we're finding out. And because we rely a lot on documentations from the enslaver or from churches and stuff, you know, you have to read those documentations with a little bit of grain of salt, because,
Yes.
you know, they're not going to write about, you know, their stories and who looks good and who looks bad,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
When did slavery end in New Hampshire? At the end of the Civil War, or?
At the Emancipation Proclamation.
But because they weren't a part of the Civil War battle, were they? Was there a
Yeah,
battle?
New Hampshire participated in the Civil War. New Hampshire soldiers. Also, we had some Black soldiers who participated in the Civil War. Yeah, New Hampshire did not officially end slavery before the Emancipation Proclamation. There was on the books this gradual emancipation, but it was not official until the 13th Amendment.
Until the 13th Amendment, right? I got you.
Yeah.
What's also on the trail, if I may ask, a couple of things that you all have, exhibits or something like that?
So in Portsmouth, we have a trail of 22 sites that talks about the Black history. The same in another town, Milford, where Harriet Wilson was from. And we're working to put markers up across the state on these 20 different sites where we know Black history occurred. And a couple years from now, we hope to have them all marked out. But New Hampshire has a lot of firsts when it comes to Black history, which we're finding. Um, the first man to be elected to public office was someone from New Hampshire. And we have many authors. The first magician to make it really be all over the country was lived in New Hampshire. So we have a lot of these stories of first, and then we have a lot of these stories of men just trying to survive and be good citizens, like Amos Fortune and Jaffrey, who at age 65 bought his own freedom, started a business, a tanning business, and was able to leave money to the town for a lecture series that still continues till today. His house is still standing. It needs to be saved and marked as a historical site, but his house is still standing.
Oh, incredible! I
So
love
there's tons of stories, tons of stories.
which this could lead us to say it's the one thing about our brothers and sisters. We've always been resilient and have a sense of tenacity that even in something as with the lack of support and the numbers of other like-minded people in New Hampshire, we still made it happen.
Absolutely. Black folks that had to invent and reinvent and constantly do whatever it took to survive, to strive, to become good citizens. You see that all across the state, all across the country, you know, this courage, this resilience, this determination, the strength, it's all there in these stories.
Yeah.
And once you start looking at these stories, those stereotypes that they try to put on us have to fall apart. It's
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons we love to tell these stories.
Yeah.
From the youngest to the oldest, from the weakest to the strongest, these stories speak of our courage and determination. One of our other stories is that of Ona Marie Judge, who was enslaved to George and Martha Washington. She escapes from the Washingtons, ends up living in Portsmouth and Greenland, New Hampshire. And in her later years, when she was interviewed, they asked her, wouldn't she had rather, because she ends up living in poverty in New Hampshire because of racism. She couldn't find work. But she said she would rather die free than live in the opulence of the presidential mansion. So that desire for for selfhood, for selfness, for
Yes.
determining who you are, beats everything.
Yes.
And we constantly see those courageous stories all across the country of
Yes.
African Americans thriving to not only succeed for themselves, but for their generations to follow.
Yeah. As we move up the timeline, and what maybe one more question or something, does New Hampshire and Portsmouth play a role in the civil rights era, and through that time frame, and marches and that
Absolutely.
kind of thing? Is there a riot that ever
Absolutely.
happened there, or whatever?
Absolutely. We had in one of our towns, we definitely had the KKK come through and march through the town of Exeter. And there was
Wow.
these alternative movements. We had a lot of the desegregation of the Wentworth Hotel is a story of Black folks and white folks coming together to create an event that would force the Wentworth Hotel to desegregate. That was all planned. So um, we were totally involved in the civil rights movement here. We also have the story of reverse busing, where the South was sending their agitators to the North to disrupt the North, and we have those stories here. That's part of our research now, bringing us to research what was going on here. A family helped Dr. King and his family when they needed to be out of the South for a little bit.
They came to New Hampshire?
Mm-hmm. He was in the
Wow.
White Mountains for a little bit to get away from the stress and strain of the work he was doing.
Wow. Is there a older Black business that operated for a long time, funeral home or
Well, there
anything like
there
that?
is still one that I can remember. It's Beacon Rugs, where they a rug cleaner. That's still in operation now. That's been here for a long time. New Hampshire, we had the Pease Air Force Base, which brought in a lot of African Americans to the state, and we had an Army base in Manchester again. And a lot of the businesses, the barber shops, the dry cleaners, um, any of these service industry were run by African Americans here. The
Gotcha.
entrepreneurial spirit was very alive and well
Yeah, I
in
got
our
just two more
state.
questions. Is there a Black neighborhood in New Hampshire that when I come to town, where do I go to get me some soul food?
Good luck.
Ah, I gotta get some soul food.
There's a Jamaican restaurant just opened up. There's
Okay.
Manchester is really becoming much more diverse in food that's offered.
Is there a question that I haven't asked you? What's the website for your organization? That kind of thing. How can we support it?
So if you want to know more about our work and what we're doing, our programs, we're offering a lot of virtual programs now because of COVID. You can visit us at blackheritagetrailnh.org, blackheritagetrailnh.org. And you
Okay.
can find out much more about what we're doing, how you can help, and how you can join and attend any of our programs.
Okay. Is there a festival, a Black Art, a Black History festival in New Hampshire or something?
So we're actually working on creating the Juneteenth festival.
Okay.
We do a big celebration now, but we're moving to make it a festival. It's not a festival yet, but hopefully
Okay.
by next year it is.
Okay.
Right now we have it in 4 parts, you know, a couple of educational pieces, workshops, educational piece, a concert where we're partnering with one of the music halls to bring some musicians, and then we do an ancestral reverence ceremony with African drumming and dance at the burying ground.
Well, hey, everybody, this is what we do on Strong Inspirations. We give you stories across this country. I'm telling you, I got to come to New Hampshire. I was thinking of a road trip last year, didn't do it, which would have taken me up through New Hampshire, up all the way as far as Maine. I just thought I'd like to see that. And so maybe this is the year. Everybody.
Maine has a Black History tour too. So
okay.
Absolutely fantastic tour. Great story about Malaga Island.
How far is Maine from you?
From Portsmouth, it's an hour. No, Portsmouth, Maine is right over the border in 5 minutes, but to Portland, Maine, where the Black Heritage, where they have their Black Heritage Trail, is an hour.
Okay. Hey, everybody, this is what we do with Strong Inspirations. I'm so excited. Hit the subscribe button. Come on this video, like it. She gave it to you, something that I know you didn't know. I thank you for watching us. And to you, I want to say, sister, I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, doing what you're doing, because we really appreciate it. And we're going to say goodbye. We out. We coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.